This video is an introduction to multimodal authorship. What is multimodality? Multimodality refers to the combination of modes and the meanings produced through the designed juxtaposition of signifiers. In other words, it refers to the ways in which we not only read written or printed language, but how we also read images, gestures, sounds, video, and any combination of such modes that communicate meaning. Think about reading a Wikipedia page. Multiple modes are at work. Written text, images, and hyperlinks work together to create meaning, and it is the role of the reader to balance which modes carry which meanings, and how these meanings relate to each other. Some people might read more meaning from an image as opposed to text. The reader designs their own path of meaning through multiple modes of communication. Multimodality ultimately expands the notion of what we consider a text. A text can be a web page, a dance, an image, a video, or a video game, anything that can be read to determine meaning. This gives way to the concept of new literacies, diverging from the monomodal practices of the written language in the classroom, which have become far too narrow considering the scope of new media and technology available. Multimodal discourses bring the pervasiveness of digital technology to the forefront, seeking to expand traditional ideas of literacy practices to include and value the multimodal sites of learning within formal and informal learning spaces. What does this mean? This means that educators are called to understand, appreciate, and employ the multimodal practices of their students within the classroom. The web, video games, and digital editing software are valuable tools for learning and meaning making and can certainly play a role in developing critical literacy skills that are increasingly more relevant in our digitally connected lives. I want to talk about the role of Videoplay, which includes video games and video mashups, the resequencing of digital frames. When it comes to videographic text and engaging in the practices of playing a video game or creating a video using digital editing tools, the reader or user is situated as an author in their design of meaning. Kress develops the role of the reader of a multimodal text as the designer of meaning, an active role in decoding meaning across a range of modes. Think about a video game. There are moving images, text, sound, icons, movement, colors, a plethora of modes at work, many of which are controlled by the gamer. Along these lines, the interpretation of a multimodal text can be considered a form of semiotic production unto itself. How do these meanings work together, and how do we move across them? Considering that meaning is interpreted or designed by the reader of a multimodal text, Cope and Calancis track the role of the reader and how the balance of agency and meaning construction has shifted in favor of the viewer. Positioning the viewer of a screen as a reader of a multimodal text via any digital media, that is, websites, television, video games, etc., sheds new light on how such media are indeed read. Today's screens are designed for many viewing paths, allowing for diverse interests and subjectivities amongst viewers, and the reading path they choose will reflect the considerable design effort the viewer has put into their reading. When considering the concept of video play, the screen that displays the videographic texts becomes a site of interactivity as well as co-authorship between, say, the video game developers and the gamer playing the game. The use of pre-existing or mediated moving images to create and recreate narratives is a common practice on these screens. In other words, adolescent users of digital devices engage in practices of reappropriating the visual frame and the modal landscape of meaning. A gamer is telling his or her own story through the game, and the editor of a video mashup is telling his or her own story through resequencing a video they found online to carry new meanings. As such, the controllers of the digital screen can be considered authoring tools insomuch as they offer the user an opportunity to rework and develop their own narratives, reusing the on-screen digital video material to create that narrative. What is important here is how we, as educators, can use these literacy practices to develop more meaningful and relevant learning within the classroom. The power of multimodality lies in expanding learning and enhancing literacy across modes, since you can do a lot of the same things in one mode that you can do in the next, so a pedagogy which restricts learning to one artificially segregated mode will favor some types of learners over others. A student who may not be familiar in traditional formats of writing may be highly specialized in complex practices of video play. Should one format of expression be so highly favored over another, or perhaps is there a way to expand the idea of academic to include multimodal formats? This leads to the concepts of transformation and transduction developed by Besmer and Kress. Transformation involves moving meaning from one mode to the same mode. Think reading a story and then summarizing that story in writing. Transduction involves moving meaning from one mode to an entirely different mode. Think reading a story and then creating a collage of images to represent that story. Learning across and between modes of meaning widens academic possibilities and makes room for different types of learners whose fluency in a particular mode might otherwise be neglected. Classrooms that omit the multimodal resources students use to make meaning outside the classroom undermine the learning students bring to the classroom. Students fail to identify or even disidentify with teachers and schools that do not seem to value or accept their learning practices from informal learning spaces. When students are given a choice in using the modes that are most important to them within the formal classroom, they are empowered in their learning and meaning making. This choice of modes can then be extended across modes for deeper engagement with multiliteracies and critical literacy as a whole. The narratives that adolescent students read and reshape through Videoplay are telling of a fluency and expressive gap that is not found within the classroom. Multimodal authorship lends itself to teaching critical literacy skills to students, an appeal to become active viewers and authors in recontextualizing videographic material. Working closely with the modes of videographic texts, students and teachers have the opportunity to critically analyze the source materials or gaming artifacts and the implications embedded within the representational choices. Videoplay need not be outlawed in the classroom, but brought into curricular discussions of critical and media literacy. G calls attention to how ludic learning is a key element within informal learning spaces, as real learning is always associated with pleasure and ultimately a form of play, a principle almost always dismissed by schools.